welcome guys to the Geek Speak podcast. I'm so excited about this episode because we have none other than American bankers Miriam Cross. And Miriam is a fintech and technology writer for American Banker. I'm just excited to have you on today, Miriam. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's jump right on in with our questions. And so your path to becoming a writer at American Banker, how did you get such a prestigious partner with such a prestigious brand?
Well, I was working, I moved to the US 8.5 years ago to work at Kiplinger's Personal Finance magazine. And I was there for 7 years where I mostly wrote a lot about travel, but also a lot of other personal finance topics, and banking came up. I helped with our best banks rankings for 3 years. And after 7 years, it was time for a change, and the job at American Banker popped up.
Okay, awesome. So you said you moved to the US. So where are you moving from?
Toronto.
Oh, from Toronto. So
Yeah.
are you originally, were you born in Toronto? So you're Canadian.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great, great, great. I remember I think I was in high school in the Bahamas, and we took a trip to Toronto, and we went to Niagara Falls, and it was all frozen over and everything at that time, but it was great. So we were in your home, in your backyard. Let me ask you, how many articles do you have to write in a month, or even better than that? How many have you written? What's the most that you've written?
So I think a better way to describe it is in a week.
Okay.
So generally 2 features a week, and then smaller items as they come up. So 2 features, and then like maybe 1 or 2 other items in a week.
Gotcha. So I know there's a lot of research that goes into that. So what's some of the process that you use as far as your research into some of the articles that you write?
I do background reading, and I've learned not to be afraid of asking really simple questions for the people I'm interviewing, to ask them to break things down in layman's terms.
Gotcha. So that leads me into my next question, which is, do you have a technical background, and what made you interested in technology and finance in the first place?
I do not have a technical background. Don't ask me to do anything techy.
Well, that's interesting that you are a fintech and technology writer, because you are really great at it. I've read a ton of your articles, and just based on how you structure everything, I mean, you ask the right questions, and you get the answers that everybody's looking to read.
Oh, thank you. I'd say more so, it's not like I quite have a finance background either, although I learned a lot while I was working at Kiplinger's. But in terms of finance, like I think I've always been pretty good at managing my money. It's always been of interest to me. So I think that helps me with the finance part and maybe the banking part. And in terms of technology, I've learned like you don't need a background in what you're writing in. You just have to be willing to do a lot of research. And like I said, ask simple questions. And in some ways it kind of works out in your favor, because if you have to break things down for your audience, then you need to understand it for yourself first.
That is so true, because I know some of the questions that you have asked before have been some really tough questions, and to really break those down and to get simplified, I can understand why you do it. So you interview like some of the top technology executives, and I'm sure you've heard some interesting trends. Like, what are some of the top 3 trends that you've heard in banking from some of your recent interviews?
So what I was talking about pretty recently was branch transformation projects.
Yeah.
So a lot of banks have put plans to modernize their branches on the back burner, which made sense during the pandemic, as they had to focus more on bulking up their digital capabilities. But now if you have a really good online experience and customers come into the branch, it's going to clash, like if you have a dated looking branch. So a lot of banks, now that they've improved their digital capabilities, now they have to turn back to their branch transformation projects and modernize those, which can mean more open floor plans, teller pods instead of teller stations. And also, like, they're big on demos, so using tablets or removable devices to teach customers how to use mobile and online banking.
That's
So that's fun.
that's pretty awesome because I know. Have you seen that through COVID? Maybe some of these decisions were sped up. Do you think in some of the articles that you've written or some of the people that you've spoken with?
For digital banking,
Yeah.
yes. Like for digital banking capabilities, yes.
Okay. So
Mhm.
from those trends, what excites you the most? In your personal banking.
So another one is personalization. A lot of banks of all sizes have been taking a lot more interest in using all the data they have about their customers to make more targeted offers or encourage them to consider certain products or make certain decisions. And some of this is reactive, but they're also trying to be more proactive in certain ways,
Right.
kind of like head off customer questions as they come, remind them about payment due dates or things like that. So that is definitely of interest to me. I remember, so at my bank, a few years ago, I was in the branch for some reason, and the teller who was helping me said, by the way, I've noticed like your balance is a lot, like your balance is like kind of consistently this amount, and you could qualify for this different account, which has more perks. And like I never would have thought about that otherwise, but it made total sense. And now that is the account I use, and it does have more perks. So like that's the kind of service that I would love to hear more
Yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah. That hyper personalization is really critical. I think a lot of banks are now starting to get on board with that. When you think about looking at some of the trends that customers really want and need, that's important because if my bank would come to me and make suggestions to me, then that and tell me based on some of the trends or spending habits or if I have a goal that I want to accomplish and they're in line and in tune with my financial account, and that really makes it
Mhm.
even better. So that's a really good trend. So another question I have for you is, what is an area that you feel banks and credit unions need to focus on more in the next 2 to 3 years?
So one thing I've been finding super interesting in terms of what the fintechs are doing that I think banks should be focusing more on is coming up with products that serve either niche communities or underserved communities. So there are a lot of challenger banks out there for people of color, for immigrants. There's one for the LGBT community, a lot for children and for families, and in couples. That's something I just was looking into. So this is something like these have features that the people who use them feel like they don't get out of their banks. Like a lot of the neobanks for immigrants, like their top feature is like low cost ways to transfer money abroad, which is something they really value, but it's something that's a lot harder to find at your
Right.
bank.
That I'm telling you that again, that's another area, and really tying into that hyper personalization. But when banks are specific and niche towards their customers, I think that's when you get the most value. So I can definitely see if more banks are coming online or adopting some of those trends that it's only going to benefit them and benefit their customers as well long term. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I want to ask you, where you bank. You don't have to say where you bank, but what's something that keeps you at your current bank or credit union?
Well, they have a lot of branches in Washington, D.C. And my account I was mentioning earlier how I switched to an account with more perks, and one of the advantages is they reimburse all my ATM fees, including internationally, so I always use that debit card when I
Gotcha.
travel.
And that's one trend that I see a lot, or that's something that I hear a lot, where people are saying the ease of use to getting to my bank, it be it digitally or their footprint. That's one of the things that keeps rising to the top when you look at why people stay at a particular bank and why they don't move. But I can also understand now them knowing you more as a customer and knowing what you
Hmm.
need, that's going to keep you around for a long time. So, what advice would you give to bankers looking to innovate?
So similar to what I was saying about creating more products for people who feel like they're underserved by traditional banks, and one advantage banks have over fintechs is, fintechs, especially ones that are very focused in one area, like they have a really good idea, but there isn't necessarily a plan to grow with the customer. So there are a lot of challenger banks out right now for children, usually ages like 6 to 17 in that range, but eventually the child is going to age out of
Right.
that account. or that app. So the thing banks can do is banks, like if you capture customers when they're young, then you can also grow with them over their entire lifetime as they accumulate more wealth and need loans and things like
Absolutely.
that.
And that's a challenge that I have right now because I have a 15-year-old daughter, and we've opened up like different accounts for her. And the thing about it is we were looking for, and I know there are some digital banks that are out there right now, that cater to that age group. Well, we were looking for an account specifically, in our local geographic area that would give her some flexibility where she can use that, and that is a great way to continue a banking relationship for years. Because think about it, if a kid that's 10 years old, 11 years old, or a teenager, then the next thing you know, they're going to college, and then they're becoming a young adult, and they still have that account, and or a relationship with that bank, and that continues on and on. That's just going to that's just going to give them long lasting customers. So that's very, very important. So, Miriam, the last question that I have for you, it's totally off topic. Uh, and that is, what is one thing that nobody currently knows about you? You have any special talents?
I can't think of things that nobody knows about me, but
Okay.
something you don't know about me. I guess I'm very good. I think I'm very good at finding good travel deals and planning trips in the way that like I have no shame about interrogating people about what they did on their vacations, and then like I'll remember like details like 5 years later about like where to stay and
Gotcha.
what to
Okay.
do. I have good memory
Okay.
for
So
that.
I'm gonna ask you because we are going on a trip. My daughter plays volleyball, so we're traveling. We're going to Vegas. So we're gonna be in Vegas for a little while. Then we're driving over to Anaheim, and we're gonna be there for a little bit. Have you any advice for me?
I
Okay.
mean, I have been to Vegas, and I would say the hotel rates are pretty cheap, but then they
Uh,
get you with the resort fees, so
yeah.
you have to
So we're
factor that
staying
in.
at the MGM Grand. I think it is. So
Mhm.
what I'm gonna have to do, in Vegas is make sure I duct tape my daughter's eyes so she doesn't see anything that's going on there. But
Oh, actually, tip is go to downtown Vegas, not the kitschy part, but like the cool part
okay,
of downtown
okay,
Vegas.
I'm gonna have to take your
Yeah.
advice on that and get her down there. So, um, Miriam, I
All right.
really appreciate you being on today. This has been fantastic. You shared some great information for bankers and banks, and then I learned a little bit about you with your travel tips. So this isn't going to be the last time that I ask you some questions about travel. So anytime I'm going somewhere, I'm going to make sure I reach out to you for it. All right, Miriam.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
for joining us today. All right.
All right. Thank you.